Okay, now we've got our session set up. We're going to do a setup now. Got a little session going. I got some tracks. We're going to go here to the menu bar and we'll select setup. Now here it says hardware setup. Now this is going to tell me what I've got connected to my computer. As you can see, I have a DigiDesign M-Box. So you may have an M-Box, you have a Digi003, or an M-Box Mini, or an M-Box 2 Pro, either one. This tells you what that peripheral is, that hardware setup to your computer system. And below that, we have our clock source. Now, clock source has to do with a word clock, meaning that the control of the speed of our system. And here we can have it either being internal, or we can use SPDIF. The SPDIF cables tied to the back of an M-Box will say, or into a Digi003 will be the clock source. In this case, it's internal clock source. And here, as you remember, when I started my session, I've got my sample rate. And my sample rate, of course, is 44.1. That's pretty cool. Let me move this a little bit now. And I'm going to press OK. And that's good. Now, next, I want to go to the Playback engine. Now, this is the part of Pro Tools where we have the power in our system, the playback. Now, Pro Tools will let you adjust the performance of your system by changing this system setting. And it affects its capacity to process, to playback, to record the information that we record, playback, and process in Pro Tools. And so it's based on our buffer size. How big a buffer size? How big is this chunk going to be that we can use to play back and write and record our data? And right here, our default setting normally is like 512. Sometimes I go to 1024, get a bigger size. Now, Pro takes advantage of my computer's host processor to perform these tasks. So I make sure that I'm not using too many other applications for one when I'm running this also as well. And I make sure that I can use the maximum amount of buffer size. In case of a really big recording session, I'm going to add a lot of tracks and use a lot of plugins. I want to make sure my buffer size is enough. Now here also we have back here RTAS. These are the real-time audio suite plugins. And so I can use one processor or use two. In my case, I want to use two. I want to make sure I have a powerful setup. When I start using my Pro Tools, I don't want to have tracks sort of like stop and play or stuff, slow down. I want to make sure that my system's running perfectly. Well, look, you can also increase the CPU usage limit. So here in this case, I'm at the max 90. I'm going to do 85% for right now. Now, we also have a little box here we can check, which is our real-time audio suite engine. By checking this box here, what happens is that it'll ignore errors during playback and record. Now, this may also cause pops and clicks. And in click here, you can say, okay, I want to minimize the additional I/O latency. In my case, I won't need this, so I'll leave it unchecked. But make sure you have enough power, and make sure you have the max amount of memory on your laptop or your desktop, Mac, or PC, so that you will have no problems with your playback of any files or audio in your Pro Tools session. Now, we also have here our DAE, which is our digital audio engine. That's a digital audio engine. And it's a playback buffer, disk buffer. You got me? Okay, now this is set level 2. Now, lower values for the disk buffer will reduce the disk latency. That means the system is more responsive. So it means you move a fader up and down, you can actually hear the response quicker. Now, higher values improve the disk performance. That means that the ability to go back and locate files as they're playing makes it much faster. But the system is less responsive in terms of the playback. Be aware of that. So the default, I believe, is 1500 milliseconds. That's the default setting. I'll leave it there for now. If I have any problems later on, I will go back and change this maybe to about 3,000 milliseconds or to 750 milliseconds at level 1. But we're going to use level 2. Now, cache size is due to the cache of storage of data. So here we can have a larger cache size improves performance. Now, I prefer to use a large cache size that way. As I keep moving along and adding more tracks or putting more information in, I want to have a large enough cache size so that my performance is even. It's very important. Okay. Next in my setup, we can go to disallocation. I just want to show you this one thing here about disallocation. Now what happens here, you can see about my audio tracks we made up earlier. And these audio tracks, you can see are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And remember the fifth one was a stereo track. What happens is that when I record audio in these tracks, Pro Tools allocates a certain section on our hard drive to store those tracks. That may be audio information I'm recording those tracks. As you can see, it says my Mac hard drive, it says my Pro Tools session folder, and it's going to my Pro Tools inbox session. This is known as our disallocation, so it knows where each track is at, and it allocates a specific part of my hard drive for those audio files. Now we can have a custom allocation here also, and we can also use round robin allocation for new tracks. But for right now, this is perfect. Next, peripherals. Now here we have synchronization, we have MIDI, time code. We can have any port. So I'm just going to inbox 2. I can use any port. Here I have my inbox 2. I can select port 1 to be my MIDI time code reader. I'll put down any. And generation, I can put out any. I can make MIDI port 1 to generate time code. We have our machine control, MIDI control, our Ethernet controllers, and our satellites. We won't worry about this right now. We're going to get to the basic understanding, but this is information you need to know later on as you may grow your system. You may have a MIDI control you want to use to control your MIDI information, and MIDI machine controllers control other machines in your system and make sure one's a master controller and one could be your MIDI machine slave remote control. We'll press OK. Well, next, we're going to go into I/O setup to show how the pathways work in Pro Tools on recording, understanding how to use their pathways to check out tracks and also to label sends and returns.